Hey everyone, it's Lexie. So in today's video I'll be sharing with you all the books that I read over the month of November. So I'm doing Vlogmas this year, so if you watch my first Vlogmas, which I think should come up around the time this video comes up, but you know we had a huge winter storm and the power was out for most of the day, so I'm happy that it has finally come back on, so this video will go up in time. So I was a little bit worried about that, but we're all good. But overall I read a total of 7 books, and for the most part I really enjoyed most of them. There was a few hit or misses, but overall it was generally a really good reading month. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. So starting out, I first read Bury Your Dead by Louise. This is the 5th book in the Inspector Gamache series, and so I can't really talk too much about the plot in this one, but it involves this man in this isolated cabin who's known as a hermit is found murdered, and it kind of leads to an investigation there. And I also ended up picking up The Brutal Telling, which is the next book in the series, and this one takes place in Quebec City. I want to say it takes place in Quebec City, but it also ties in Free Pines. So overall, like the overarching murder in this one kind of carries on over into this one, but I'm trying to be vague as possible because I don't really want to spoil anything, and I think it's good to kind of go into these not really know too much. But I really liked this one. The first, like this one in particular, leaves such a very kind of bitter taste in your mouth because it talks about how you never really 100% know somebody, and I think that is very interesting, and just how you never really know like a real person, like what they're capable of. And then this one is really interesting as well because we see Gamache. He is grieving. He went through a very horrific police incident, and throughout the story you kind of get the build up to eventually what happened, and so he's very much grieving with what's happened. So he's kind of out of sorts, and he is trying to kind of collect himself in Quebec City. And while he's there, there is a murder that takes place in the Literary and Historical Society, and it kind of delves into Quebec history and also kind of the tensions between the English and French speakers in Quebec. I think it did a really good job about that. But overall, like I said, I really love all the books in this series so far, and it just gets better and better. I love how the author is able to expand on the characters in this town, and I really love that. So I'm all caught up actually now, so I finished all the books on my TBR for 2020, which I'm very proud about. So I just needed to finish these two, which I'm very happy about. So yeah, overall, like I said, I gave these a 4 out of 5 stars. They're really good. I love this author, and I cannot wait to marathon with the rest of the series in 2021. So next I ended up picking up a very anticipated release, and it is Shadow Sands by Robert Brinza, and this is the 2nd book in the Kate Marshall series. I'm a huge fan of his Erica Foster series, and this is his new series. And because this is the 2nd book in the series, I can't really talk too much about the general plot, but kind of the general synopsis of this series is that it follows Kate Marshall, who was a former police officer, and 15 years ago she ended up capturing the 9 Elm serial killer, and what should have been a very, you know, high point in her career ended up being like kind of made her life fall apart. And so 15 years later she's still kind of putting the pieces of her life back together. So she is now a criminology professor at a university, and so there is a string of murders taking place around the Shadow Sands reservoir, and she ends up kind of investigating, going into it. She inadvertently gets involved in kind of the investigation, and she cannot say no. I really loved this series. I think Kate Marshall is very much a complex character, and she's very interesting, and I really cannot wait to see what happens next. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. It's incredibly fast paced. I couldn't put it down, and the chapters that are told from the killer's perspective I found were especially creepy and eerie. So they were very kind of intense, and I thought they were really well done. My only complaint was that I felt like the ending was very rushed, and I just wanted more from these characters because it just ends and then you get like a 2 weeks later type thing. So I just wanted more from the characters in here, but nevertheless I still really liked it. That's just me being a little nitpicky. So these next 3 books were sent to me by MB Communications, so thank you for sending these to me. So the first one that I picked up was The Unspoken by Ian K. Smith. This is a book that I had a lot of high expectations for going into it, and I just love the hard jacket of this. It's like the Chicago skyline, which I've really enjoyed because I used to live in Chicago when we first moved to the States. But this one I was really intrigued about. It follows a former police officer who ended up retiring and getting like kind of settling a case where he didn't want to be involved in police cover-up, and so because of that he ended up getting a lot of money from the police department, so he doesn't really need to work, so he chooses the cases that he works on as a private investigator. So when he's approached by a really wealthy woman who asks him to find her daughter who's disappeared, it kind of goes off from there. But I had high expectations going into it. I felt like the background of the main character in here could be really unique and, you know, make this really interesting, but I did not like this at all. I gave this a 2 out of 5 stars. It just wasn't good. I couldn't care for the characters. I couldn't care for the mystery aspect of this. I didn't think, like, the writing was very awkward, and the main character will just like kind of say random things that are meant to be funny, but they don't seem natural, like they don't flow very well. Like I just wasn't a big fan of this book. Like I didn't like it at all. And there's this weird like subplot of vigilante justice which just didn't fit with the overarching like narrative of the book. Like it stuck out like a sore thumb, and I just didn't like it at all. So like I said, I was not a big fan of this book. It was a major disappointment. I feel like with the general synopsis of this series as a whole, it sounded like it had a lot of potential, but it just like failed in every single aspect of the, you know, every single aspect that it could, you know, improve itself on. It just fell flat, I think, in many different ways. So I definitely won't be continuing on with this series. So despite having a really bad experience with the first book, I was pleasantly surprised with these next 2, and it is Lost Hills and Bone Canyon by Lee Goldberg, and this is the his new crime series following Eve Ronan's. And so basically the premise of this series as a whole is that Eve was involved with a viral video of her arresting a celebrity who is being abusive to his girlfriend, and so the police department saw that they were getting a lot of positive press from that, so Eve used that to her advantage, and so she was able to be promoted from robbery into homicide, and she is the youngest person ever to be in homicide, and so she's always trying to prove herself and prove that she deserves to be there. And so the first one follows this investigation where a family, I will warn you, these are very, very graphic, especially this one, so if you are uneasy about those things, you're forewarned. But essentially the premise of this one, in particular Lost Hills, is that this family has disappeared from their home. It looks like they were completely slaughtered, and everyone thinks like no one really knows what's going on, so Eve is investigating that one. But I thought this one was an incredible start to the series. Like I said, it's very graphic and gory, but it was still incredibly fast-paced. I think Eve is such an interesting character, and because of how she was put in this role, I think makes it also very interesting as well, because a lot of the crime series in particular are very stereotypical in that they're very seasoned detective, and you know, they're very jagged, like the job has made them very jaded. And I think because she's still new, she still has that kind of, you know, newbie perspective in here, which I really enjoyed. So I gave both of them a 4 out of 5 stars. The second one follows these after a fire that took place in California. These bones are found in someone's backyard, and it starts an investigation from there. But this one comes out January 5th, and I really liked it. I thought it was a really good sequel. We get more character development with a lot of the main characters in here, and this has definitely become one of my favorite newest crime series right now. So like there's only one book currently out, so if you want to get caught up with the series, is pretty well like it's pretty easy to do, especially with this one coming out in the new year. But yeah, if you guys are looking for a new fresh crime series, then I highly recommend you check this one out. I was pleasantly surprised. And lastly, I ended up picking up the Tales and Teacups booklet picks for the months of November and December, which was The Beauty in Breaking by Michelle Harper. And this one is one that I had really high expectations for, but I was just left underwhelmed. From the general synopsis of this book, it made it seem like it's this very progressive memoir about this woman who faces racism in a predominantly white male dominated field, and while this is going on, she is finding different ways that the human, I guess, spirit is and body are able to break, and how you can find beauty in the breaking process and healing from that, and how she relates the cases of the patients and what they're going through with like applying what she's learned with those patients into her own personal life. And I thought that would be really, like, if executed really well, I think it would have made it amazing. But I felt like underwhelmed, especially with this. Like, it makes it seem like it's this very much a dialogue on racism in especially the medical field, but there's only like literally a couple sentences about it. Like, it was very much an afterthought and not really the main focus of the book, and she focuses more on the patient's story rather than herself. So I feel like this is a memoir of the patients he's had more so than with herself, and I wanted it to learn more about her. And we get some little tidbits here or there, and at the end of each like patient story we get like a blurb, like a paragraph basically saying how she applied that to her own life. But yeah, it just wasn't like, I had high expectations and I feel like I wanted more out of it. I wanted more of her personal experience with these things. Like, I don't know, like there was a really good discussion on the Goodreads group down, and I'll link it down below if you guys want to know more about it, but I just wanted more from it. So I don't know, I was disappointed with this. I gave this like a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I still really enjoyed it, but for overall, like, I wanted more from it, and I feel like it had so much more potential to be something that really stuck with you and meant a lot. Like, it could be very meaningful. I think you can pull some of the stuff out of here, but I just wanted so much more from it. So yeah, I was a little disappointed with this one. So that's it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below what books you read this month and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.